The delay, we had a vote scheduled at just the wrong time, and I thank the panel for indulging us. This is the first in a series of hearings, and I do want to say, because obviously the World Bank has gotten somewhat more attention of late than it had previously, but I will say that the genesis of this hearing began in a conversation Dr. Stiglitz and I had in Davos in January. We have long had an interest here. The ranking member and myself were two of the four members, along with a former colleague from Iowa and our current colleague from California, who pushed hard for the debt relief at a time when there was some resistance to it. This committee's concern and the concern of many of the members with a more effective use of the international financial institutions for the fight against poverty is a long-standing, and I do want to say this is not an opportunistic hearing. I will say, as an elected official, that I do not mean by that to denigrate opportunism as a mode of operation. I don't want to be saying something that could be used against me later. But in this case, we really had been thinking about this for some time. And it is the first in a series of hearings we're going to have about the role that the international institutions, financial institutions, can play in the war against poverty. And I think it is important to reaffirm a couple of things, namely that it is possible through thoughtful action to reduce poverty, abolish it, eliminate it. We're not in the miracle business, but it can be substantially reduced. It is also the case that I believe, and many others do, that we have existing institutions which are A, imperfect, and B, indispensable. And therefore it is our job to do what we can to improve them without going after them in a most negative way. And I am pleased that when I first began involved with this, we had the campaign called 50 Years is Enough. Well, we now know that 60 years is too little, not in terms of duration, but in terms of activity. And there are some very important issues that we plan to deal with. On the question of the bank, there is a legitimate set of concerns now about what role the IMF should be playing as things have evolved from when it was first set up. There are problems of excessive conditionality. Many of us on the Democratic side in particular have been concerned about what appears to be a bias against the rights of workers that has crept in to some of the activity. There is a question about how you fight corruption effectively and how you fight corruption in a way that does not make people who live in corrupt countries double victims of corruption. Victims first when people steal money that was meant for them, and victims again when people then withhold any further money for them. We need to be able to sharpen that fight against corruption so we go after those who are really the problem. There is the question of the extractive industries, of the failure of mineral wealth to benefit large numbers of people the way it ought to. And all of those are things we are going to study on an ongoing basis. I have 2 minutes left in my statement, and I'm going to yield it to the gentleman from California. And then in a step that the parliamentarian tells me is okay, I'm going to give up my second 5 minutes. We have 10 each, and the ranking member and I have both agreed not to extend the time, and I appreciate that because we do have a little bit of a truncation. I'm going to offer my 5 minutes to the witnesses, divided up among them, because I don't know that all the testimony will be summarized within 5 minutes. And at this point, I recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from Alabama.